Hey, Husker fans, Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra, and this is the three keys to Nebraska and Ohio State. The Huskers coming off a 56-7 loss to Indiana. That was not pretty, and it does not portend well going into this week. It's a rough loss to have going into a week when you're playing probably the most talented team in the country, maybe the most talented team on the schedule as well. Ohio State's been very good. They've controlled Nebraska in this series since a 2011 come-behind victory for the Huskers. People remember that. Nebraska won that one 34-27. They haven't beaten Ohio State since then. They haven't come all that close. This Saturday, Nebraska's got to find a way. They're a 25.5-point underdog, which means they're not expected to even compete much in this game. A 4-touchdown loss would not be a stunner, would be a big surprise, nor would a 21-point loss. Obviously, Nebraska has to find a way to compete against Ohio State's roster, which is very good on offense and elite on defense. So how do they do this? How do they rebound from a pretty ugly loss to Indiana and try not to have a second one in a row? Let's start with this. Key number one, buck the trend. And yes, of course, I'm using Buckeyes there a little bit. They have to not only buck the trend of the way they've played against Ohio State, which is they've struggled, I think, a lot to get going early in the games offensively. There was an exception to that rule in 2020 when they scored on the first drive, and a little bit in 2018 when they made some plays early in that game. But generally speaking, Nebraska's not had a lot of success early in football games against Ohio State, so they've got to find a way to get points on the board early. And then they also have to just buck this general trend they've had against good teams of just sluggish starts. They've got to find a way on defense to get a stop right away. If you remember against Illinois scored on the first drive, and then Indiana did the exact same thing. Nebraska's defense has to get a stop early. I do think it's possible. I think Nebraska, this isn't a hair-on-fire kind of game, but I think it's a come out and be really, really focused and on all of your details kind of game. And if you find yourself focused and on your details, you might be surprised with the amount of success that you can have against Ohio State. I think it's a very good team, but Ohio State, as people know, are going to do what they do. They're not going to try to be gimmicky against Nebraska. They're not going to come up with a special game plan against the Huskers. They'll save that for Penn State or Michigan. You're not going to see 6 trick plays on Saturday. You're going to see Ohio State be Ohio State and try to be that really well. So if Nebraska scouted it well and they go in and they're focused and they're locked in and they play to their details, I think they could have some success. Buck the trend early in that game. Next thing, Dylan's dice. And what I mean by that is Dylan Raiola, the quarterback for Nebraska, has to roll the dice a little bit. He's got to take more chances. He has to be able to throw it into tight spaces, and I know that you're risking interceptions when they do that, but as you know, Dylan Raiola threw 3 of those in the most recent game against Indiana, and he was probably trying to play it a little safe. You've got to throw the football when a guy's open, and I think Nebraska just needs to get him more comfortable against all kinds of defenses, but also trusting that arm. Hey, let it go. Let's see what you can do. Let's see what kind of throw you can make here. Let's send somebody deep. Dylan's got to roll the dice a little bit. You have to try to put Ohio State's defense, although this is not easy to do, on its heels. And you do that by trying to throw the football. You saw what Oregon did, and that's how you do it. You've got to get somebody over the top. You've got to take some chances. You've got to play with a little bit of pace and tempo, and you have to get on top of Ohio State. And that's not always easy to do with an offense, but that's what Nebraska's got to try to do. They have to play with a little bit of confidence and a little bit of tempo. Yes, patience, of course, you want to execute well, but you have to try to play with a certain pace, and Dylan's got to be the guy leading the charge there. So I think it's important that Dylan Raiola roll the dice a little bit and try to play his absolute best. Then the last key number 3, test their will, and by that I mean Will Howard, Ohio State's quarterback. Now, he's a nice player, and he's had a pretty good year, made a few mistakes against Oregon, and here's the reality. You've got to make Ohio State drive the length of the field. Don't give them easy stuff. Don't give them 45-yard runs. Don't try to get overly cute with your scheme defensively like at times they did against Indiana. Make Will Howard beat you again and again and again. Let him throw into coverage sometimes. Let's see if he can find the right guys. Let's see if he doesn't throw an interception. He's been interception prone at times in his career. Try to see if he can throw another one. Play a little bit of coverage behind a 4-man pass rush, maybe bring a 5th guy, but don't give him easy lanes. Don't give him easy lanes to run in. He's a good runner. If you bring pressure and you don't get home, then all of a sudden he's got a really easy lane for a 15 or 20-yard run. What I'd like to see Nebraska do here is play defense, right? You don't have to be cute. You don't have to be special, but at least for the first 3 or 4 drives, make this guy go down there and earn it. And he might. He might. He might go 4 for 4 on those drives like they did in 2017 and score 28 points. But make him do that. It's also possible that on those first 4 drives, Ohio State scores 17 points, right? And it's 17-7 at halftime. That's what you want. You want to shorten the game a little bit. You want to make him drive the length of the field, and you want to make Ohio State execute. And if you make Ohio State execute and they execute, you'll live with it. You're going to lose, 38-17. But maybe Ohio State doesn't have a great day. Maybe they struggle with their execution on offense, and you end up with a game where in the fourth quarter, maybe it's interesting. I don't anticipate Nebraska winning this football game. I think it's going to be challenging. Ohio State's favored by 25.5 for a reason, and I would not have picked Nebraska to win this game even if Nebraska had beaten Indiana. However, I want to make clear that I think Nebraska can make progress in this game, and they can go into their following game against UCLA with a lot more confidence than what they have right now, which is very little after the 56-7 loss to Indiana. Okay, that is our 3 keys for the Nebraska-Ohio State game. I'm Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra.